So I know a lot of you are, of course, very familiar with United Way, so, and a lot of you maybe not so much. But I'm going to just kind of give a really high-level overview of United Way. If I talked about everything United Way does, those of you who are very familiar know that we would be here probably much, much, much longer than you want to be. So we are the Waverly Shell Rock Area United Way. United Ways themselves have been around since 1887, but here locally in the Waverly Shell Rock area since 1951. We are one of 1,300 independent United Ways, so meaning that although there are a lot of United Ways across the country and even across the world, each one is independent. Therefore, the only thing you'll find in common pretty much between United Ways is the name United Way. Every United Way makes its own decisions on how it operates, what it does in the community, what roles it plays. Even from our friends down the road down to Cedar Valley United Way down in Waterloo, we're different from what they are. Our boards have chosen different priorities and different staffing models and different service areas and all of those things. So we cover all of Bremer County, and then we cover parts of Butler County. Currently we're covering Shell Rock and then up into Clarksville, kind of that area over there. Not a huge area, but a decent span there. So all of those small communities and the rural areas within there. So as you might think, that does present some challenges because what a need looks like in Sumner, for example, is a little bit different from a need here in Waverly, and the way that we serve those needs is a little bit different from one another. 99%, oh, sorry, it looks like my fonts didn't carry over. Gosh. So 99% of our funds remain in the local communities. 1% is what we send out to United Way worldwide. So if you've heard things or seen things about don't support United Way because their corporate heads make so much money, that may or may not be true. I don't know what they make at United Way worldwide, but what I know is that we're only sending 1% to United Way worldwide. And that's sort of like a franchise fee that allows us to use their name. It allows us to fundraise under the United Way model. But then what it also does is it gives us 25% of that 1% back to us as a local United Way to use as educational flex credits. So when United Way Worldwide puts on conferences, we can go to those conferences using flex credits, and they build on one another. So for example, I just went to a conference in September, and we were able to use flex credits to attend that conference, and those were about 3, maybe even 4 years of flex credits kind of built in. So especially as a small United Way, they've realized that we need to let those carry over. The carryover length is actually based on the size of a United Way. So a large United Way needs less time to use up their flex credits than a small one-person United Way, because what works 1 year for a training might not work the next year. If I'm already committed to things and I can't be out of the office, I might not be able to go to that training. So that money comes back to us. Everything else stays here in our communities between our allocations, our crisis funding, and then our coalition work and such that we do in the community as well. Those funding decisions with that then money that's staying in the community is made by our board of directors. We have 18 members on our board of directors, local individuals who are vested in the community. We have a board member in here and a past board member or two as well, and so they can all vouch that that is a grueling, terrible, awful process to go through because we have so many great programs in our community, so to make those funding decisions is really hard. We're receiving about double the amount in requests of the money we actually have available to give out. So the board members dig through those applications, ask questions of the agencies. We meet one-on-one with every agency to hear about their program. We've changed our funding model within the last 3 years. We've put our funds now into education, income, and health. And that's done simply because of research proven on building blocks of a community, and that those 3 things all need to be funded. If you think about it as those building blocks, if you pull one out, the rest is going to topple. You have to put focus into all of those areas. With that funding change, we also changed a little bit more about how we allocate to, in that we've always known that a lot of agencies that we work with and a lot of programs we work with do good things in our community. That was never a question. The board never thought, oh, maybe we should fund this agency more or less because they might not be a good agency. We've known that they're all great, but we also know that when we're talking donor dollars, we need to prove that. We need to hold those agencies accountable on the dollar side as well as on the measurement side. So not only, Agency X, we gave you $1,000, you need to tell us where that $1,000 went. And then also, we gave you $1,000, what'd you do with it? What's the return on investment, so to speak? What are those outcome measurements? And our agencies are at different levels in how well they're doing on that outcome measurement piece. Some are doing really, really well. Some are still struggling a little bit, and we're trying to work with them to bring them to that measurement piece. We feel that if we can get those agencies to really tracking those measurements, that it'll make them stronger for other funders as well. So not only do we want to see those numbers, we think they should want to see them. We think as an agency it's important to kind of take that internal look at yourself as well. We thought that our participants in our program were accomplishing X, but it turns out they're not. So what as an agency then do we need to do to move that needle in the direction that we want it to go? We've held trainings for the agencies. We continue to meet with them one-on-one. We have the board meet with them. A variety of different ways that we've helped to bring them along through that so they're not fluttering in the water alone. On that concept of funding education, income, and health, I'm just going to pass around. This is a new infographic that we've been presented with just to really show you, and I'm not going to read it to you. I'll let you kind of take a look at it yourself, but just to show you how that education, income, and health all play into one another. And while we, might have an affinity for one organization or another, you as an individual might have an affinity, this kind of lays out why would you want to put money into United Way. Let's say you love Habitat for Humanity. Why shouldn't I give all of my money to Habitat? Why should I spread it out through a United Way agency who is dividing these funds amongst all the agencies? You can see how I like to pick on Big Brothers, Big Sisters because they're my office neighbor and we share a lot of things. But, while we might say we're just going to put a lot of money into Big Brothers, Big Sisters because we think mentoring is really important and that's the key to the kids. Well, it might be one key to the kids, but also those kids have food needs. Those kids as parents could potentially have legal needs. They might have shelter needs, might have mental health needs, a variety of things, and that's why United Way is able to take that funding then and then spread it out over these agencies who are providing all of these things, kind of meeting that need of that whole community versus that one individual child need. So while we love all of these agencies individually, we love them even more collectively because we see what they can all do together and how it can really kind of change lives that way. You've probably seen this before. It's a pretty simple doc that we've put together just to illustrate what even a donation of $26 can do. It's 50 cents a week. You guys are paid bi-weekly, correct? So $1. Yes, $1 pay period. I couldn't do the math in my head. And so then if you were to donate $2 per pay period, imagine what you could do. And some of these look so boring, gosh, I don't really want my donation to go buy a box of paper. I want my donation to provide meals. So why is this box of paper even on here? Well, it just, to really get you thinking that some of these programs, that box of paper actually changes what they can do. Think of Pathways, who does mental health counseling with kids. Maybe those kids aren't able to verbalize right now what issue is going on in their life. So those therapists are going through some activities where they're being creative with the paper, maybe drawing out a situation that happened. It completely changes what they're able to do. A group like the Larrabee Center, with what they're doing with their internships for people with disabilities. Well, that's great to give them their internship, but then we need to create resumes and cover letters and those things so that when those clients go on for their work outside of the internship, they have those pieces. Well, if we don't have paper, we can't print a resume. And then there are some other things, obviously, with paper, too, that's even a little bit more boring. But, just for every client that's served in essentially any program, there's paperwork that goes along with it. And that agency has to be able to have the paper to process that. Same thing with postage. Seems really boring, but really critical to an agency. I know even our agency, if we didn't have funding for postage, we couldn't send out acknowledgement letters to all of our great donors. A, we're required to send those acknowledgement letters, but B, we want to send those acknowledgement letters. It is really important, I know, to me personally, to acknowledge every gift that comes through that door. I just got the check today. I have one sweet lady in town here who sends me a $3 check every year. That is really important to her, and therefore it's really important to me. It probably costs us more by the time we send her her letter, and then we send her acknowledgement and all of that. But that's, to her, it's a heartfelt gift, and it's therefore heartfelt to me. I acknowledge it every year like it's any other $1,000 gift that I receive. She deserves that. The Bremer Butler Crisis Fund is a new partnership that was formed just this past year out of response to two things. One, the board desiring to keep more funds in our local community and making sure that every crisis dollar invested stays right here. But then also to speak to all of those agencies who were listed earlier, and I talked about how we're now looking at outcomes and impact. So now we're looking at long-term changed programs, which is important, but we also realize that we have people in our community who are in need right now. They're in crisis right now. And until their crisis is met, whatever that crisis is for that person at that moment, they can't worry about those programs that are going to create lasting change for them. We can't say, sorry that you don't have anywhere to live right now, but here's this really cool program over here. Because they don't care, because they need a place to live right now. Especially, if there's children involved. Hey, we've got a great program for your kids. We can get them backpacks. We can get them fed. We can get some mental health counseling. Well, that's great, but we need to live somewhere. So we've partnered with the Waverly Police Department for this crisis fund. So if you're familiar with what was formerly in Waverly Shell the Salvation Army model, where funds were donated through the Salvation Army and the police department made those decisions on where those crisis funds go, it's the basically exact same model in that sense. The police department is still making those decisions. That's not me having to decide who gets crisis funds and who doesn't. That's their program. But we are sure now that all of these dollars stay local. So anything that goes into that crisis fund goes directly to the police department. It is under our 501c3, so it's just kind of an extension of United Way. It is a separate bank account the police department writes those checks out of, but we do the account reconciliation on it, and we do like the gift acknowledgement and that sort of thing if anybody gives directly to this fund. But we don't charge them anything for that. We just do that as kind of a part of our service to the community to help get crisis dollars to where crisis dollars need to be. A little bit more about some of the coalition work that we do. I'm going to touch on each one of these briefly, so if you find that you're wanting to know more information about it, feel free to either ask at the end or ask whenever it works for you. Just kind of a quick rundown. The Waverly Food Secure Network is about 2 years old now. It's a group of organizations, individuals, churches. There's some kind of more front lines type of workers, and then there's some kind of community service organizations that are part of it, really just focused on what it says, food security, which is making sure that people know where their next meal is coming from and making sure that there's health and value in that meal. So what we've done, just a handful of things, we created a resource guide. You may have seen it. It's a 2-page document that just lists out where are the community meals, where's the food pantry, how do you get WIC, how do you get food stamps, crisis funding, kind of all of those things laid out into one document so that we're not constantly trying to figure out, wading everybody through the system. Now, we as service providers all know where these resources are. We also just launched, it's on our website, it's an online referral system so that if let's say I'm in need and I'm not sure what I might qualify for, so I don't really want to go to the food stamp office and the WIC office and Northeast Iowa Community Action and fill out all the forms for everybody and just to find out that I actually don't qualify. So what this site does is it kind of works a little bit like Tax Act in that you're going to put in your household members, your income, that information, and it's going to generate for you what you qualify for. So it's going to say, based on your family size and income, you qualify for food stamps. Here's where you go to get it. Here's when they're open, and here's the documentation that you need to take with you when you go there. It'll do that for every program that they qualify for. It's not 100% inclusive, and we're still working on building it out and adding to it. But right now it does cover basic needs. It covers housing. It covers food. It does cover some mental health, some domestic violence, sort of some things of that nature. And where, like I said, we're still kind of growing it. But what it does is it helps keep people from that wild goose chase around town. Where do I go? And then not only that, but I know I qualify for food stamps, but I don't know what I need to take with me when I go. Therefore, here I took today off work so I could go get my food stamps because they're only open during my work hours. And I get there only to find out that I actually needed 2 months of income proof, not just 1. So it lays all that out for people in need. We also did our first ever summer feeding program this summer, and I will get to that here in a second a little bit more too. 211 is the 24 hours a day, 7-day-a-week referral line. The difference kind of between 211 and what we've done here is 211 is more of a resource. It's going to connect you, and it's going to say, basically the caller needs to know what they're looking for in order to get valid information. So the caller could call in and say, I'm looking for food stamps. Can you help me find out where to get food stamps? And the crisis counselor at 211 can tell them where to go, but doesn't have the information as far as income. So I can tell you where to go to get food stamps, but you might not qualify for it. So that's where the difference is a little bit, and it's just a little bit wider spread. It actually, 211, our 211 call center in Cedar Rapids currently covers a 44, I believe is the most recent number, county region. So it is still zip code based though. If you call from Waverly, they're going to ask you your zip code, and then it'll bring you back to those resources in your community. But it is also 24 hours a day. I field a lot of these phone calls in my office, but I'm not there 24 hours a day. I do occasionally forget to shut off the call forwarding to my phone, so I do get these calls occasionally at weird hours of the night, but that's not what is intended to happen. This is supposed to be there for when I'm not. The Waverly Transportation Coalition is very similar to the Food Secure Network, except focused on transportation. Kind of just starting to come back. It was on hiatus for a couple of years and starting to come back as we start to talk through some more transportation issues for Waverly and kind of how to attack those. Working on early stages of what would be almost a volunteer Uber type system where you would call for a ride and you would get that ride, but there's no fee involved. So it would be run, volunteers would be doing that transportation. But working through a lot of kinks with it as far as who fields the calls, how do we make those placements, things like car seats, how do we make sure that car seats are available for those people that need them and installed correctly and the car is big enough and all of those kinds of things. So we're still trying to figure that out, put parameters on it, where are we going to give rides to, where aren't we going to, and kind of work through some of that. But without a robust public transportation system here, this is really important. We realize that, again, even back to this piece, that it'll tell you where to go to get all those services, but if you don't have a car, good luck getting to all of them. So this will help kind of bridge that a little bit.
Will that be 24 hours a day?
There would be certain hours, you would have to call and schedule, but we haven't worked through like how soon you have to call before you schedule. So, I know that we've worked with some of your staff here on late night transportation, and it probably isn't going to solve that, but we're still working on that as well, because I know that that's a real need, and we've talked a lot about how that works and also how we use volunteers in that piece as well, and that's something that's what that group is working on too. The volunteer centers, we are the volunteer center of Waverly, as well as kind of your standard United Way model. We don't do as much as we probably could with it. Brian could tell you probably how much time that would take if we did everything that we could with it. We just don't have all the hours in the day, but we do what we can. We do still have the online system. We do have a great network through Volunteer Iowa. We have access to a lot of resources through them. We do quarterly trainings with them where we go and kind of just share what's going on. They were a great partner of ours during the recent flooding, helping us through some of those pieces and how do we match volunteers during a disaster. Again, we didn't do it as well as we could have because we didn't know how to do it as well as we could have. I created sort of a Google form to take volunteers in, and I got in trouble, of course, by Volunteer Iowa saying, well, you have a module built into your online system for disaster. And I said, I'm sure I do, but I don't know how to use it right now, and we need volunteers right now. So we kind of created and got through it. Next time, we're going to be more prepared. So we're going to know what we're doing with that. But it is a great thing for us to still stay connected with, to know what's happening in the volunteer world there. Bremer County Community Partners is the Prevent Child Abuse Iowa arm for Bremer County. So that's, Again, sort of same as some of these other networks, but focusing on child abuse and strengthening the family. The biggest thing Bremer County Community Partners continues to do is the Family Fun Fair every year in April. That's still the biggest event. College Changes Everything, that's the newest initiative that we're a part of. And we got funding through Iowa College Aid. And basically what stage we're at here as a local community now is kind of a data gathering, data collection, and data analysis phase. So what we're looking at is our percent of our people in our community who are attaining post-secondary education. So taking a look at, for those who aren't attaining post-secondary education, maybe why aren't they? Or are they starting but not finishing, and kind of what's happening there? Is there a certain population that is at more risk than others, and how can we sort of address that then? Also, which is probably a reality that we realize, so let's take WSR, for example, as a school district. Let's say that there's a very high portion of them going to post-secondary education and getting post-secondary education, but they're not coming back here to Waverly. So obviously that's still affecting our rates of post-secondary education in our community. We're losing a lot of our grads. Why are we losing them? How can we keep them here? So really big issue kind of in itself, but we are, as a committee, will be kind of pinning it down. One thing to take a look at, though, is on the bottom of your little form here, there's this forecaster. And it's kind of fun. You can drill it down to your county area, and then you can, for example, move the slider on education to show, let's say that you want to see what happens if 80% of our people have a post-secondary degree of some sort, or even a certificate of some sort. And it'll show you how that affects the income level and income level, poverty rates, and crime and that sort of thing in a community. So it's kind of a fun little slider just to take a look at, gee, what would happen if this is what our community looked like? Back to the summer meal program, just want to toss a few numbers up here about that. This was our first year for it, and what was very cool about it was how collaborative it was. Lots of communities have summer feeding programs. They bring kids in, they feed them, they send them on their way. Kids had a great meal, still a great program. But what we did here in Waverly is kind of a wraparound with enrichment program in it. So every day, the hospital did 1 day a week, I believe it was Mondays? Yes. So the hospital came out and did some health topics, some physical fitness type of topics with those kids, so that not only are they getting that healthy meal, but they're also getting information. And the library came out one day, we had conservation come out, we had a variety of different topics. Next year, there's definitely a next year on the horizon. We're looking at replicating, possibly putting even more of an emphasis on educational opportunities, especially STEM programming for these kids, as educational requirements are being changed for these kids. We recognize that we need to focus on that. 534 meals served in total last summer. So for our first year, we're pretty impressed with that. We know that we have a lot of room for growth in that program as well. Another real quick thing, this is the ALICE study, which was recently done, which most of you have probably heard nothing about, but ALICE is the Asset Limited Income Constrained Employee. So we're talking about people who are working, they're just not making a wage that's high enough to make ends meet. So some of the consequences of that on a community level are that these individuals are oftentimes having to make really tough choices between should I buy food or should I buy insurance, those types of things. Should I forego my mental health medication so I can buy food for my family? What choices do I have to make? And what's important about these numbers is that if you look at just poverty, for example, in the Bremer County area, you're looking at, about 9%. But if you look at both of those together, the ALICE and the poverty rates, talking 27% of people in our community are what we know as ALICE. So our point being, we think we all know ALICE, and ALICE is really struggling. And as a United Way, we really care about that because those people are working hard. They're just not making enough to get by. And those are the people that we want to really be able to help in addition to our folks who are in poverty. But as you also know, ALICE, in a lot of cases, ALICE doesn't qualify for food stamps. ALICE doesn't qualify for daycare assistance. ALICE doesn't qualify for Section 8. So we've got our folks in poverty that there are some really great programs for, but what about ALICE, and how can we help ALICE move herself or himself or the family above that line and move on to the next level. That is all I have. It looks like I'm pretty close to time here. Does anybody have any other questions for me that I can address while I'm here? Covered a lot of info, I know. Threw a lot of information at you. But what we really as a United Way want to make sure people know is that your donations do stay local. Your board of directors works really hard to turn that Rubik's Cube and make sure that education, income, and health are all funded. Make sure that long-term programs are funded and crisis funding is funded. Make sure that we have also funding available to support these initiatives and coalition work that's going on. Because although agencies individually are also doing really great work, these coalitions have proven in Waverly specifically, or Bremer County, Butler County, whatever our area, to be incredibly effective. I spoke 2 years ago at the Iowa Hunger Summit last year about what the Food Secure Network is doing, and everybody else in that room from other communities across Iowa said, how are you doing this? How are you bringing all of these groups together and people are leaving their sort of own agendas and egos at the door, and you're able to solve these efforts on a community-wide coalition? And I always just tell them, we're just really fortunate. I mean, it's nothing that I've done. It's really just that collaborative nature of our community and how we all just want to work together to make changes. Waverly and our model, that Food Secure Network, is about to be rolled out actually kind of across the whole nation on look what Waverly has done with this, look how the community has come together and rallied around it. So it's pretty cool. Another something for the Waverly area to be proud of, like not that there's not anything else, because there's obviously lots of other things, but that is one really great thing that's coming out of some of that coalition work. So I thank you for coming out today. You all ate very healthy lunches. I'm very impressed. Very impressed. I don't know if that was a show or if that was real, but
Thanks, Jill.
thank you.